Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing swell. Wrapping up my week of OU videos is the trilogy that you've all been waiting for, how to run your DE300 project. I split this into 3 videos. In this one, I'll be talking only about the survey method. If you're doing the text-based method or the experimental method, please do check the card above or in the description for the relevant videos. Before we get started, I do need to make clear that all the information I'm giving in this video is not meant to be fact. I've created the series from my own experience as a student running her own DE300 project in order to hopefully help you understand what you need to do in order to run your project more smoothly. I was just as confused as you probably are now. But with that being said, your tutor should always be your first line of contact. So if you have any further questions regarding your project or what you need to do email them directly or send them a message on your project forum or even in your tutor group forum. Alright, let's not waffle on any longer than we have to. Let's talk about your survey project. What is a survey? So, you've chosen or were given the survey method. What is it? In the most simplest of terms, a survey is a means of gathering information about people, whether it's objective information like age, height, gender, or more in-depth information through self-reporting means. The latter of which is normally collected through questionnaires and can cover a range of things like depression or personality or finding out what the general public think about chocolate. The survey method is the easiest way to get information from a larger population sample in the shortest amount of time. You could technically run an experiment on or interview 100 people, but it will take a lot longer compared to the survey method. Planning. One of the most important things to keep in mind when planning your project is to keep it simple. I know it's really difficult to do, but trust me, you shouldn't be too ambitious here. Be aware that this is only a bachelor's level psychology project. No one is expecting you to find the latest psychological breakthrough. They just want to make sure that you understand the steps necessary to run a successful research project. Just like the experiment and text-based methods, a survey research project seeks to fill in the gaps and holes found within the literature available. The first part of planning is to find a gap that you will enjoy researching. This is incredibly important. After all, you won't do your best if you don't enjoy the work that you're doing. In general, you need at most 5 independent variables or predictor variables to test against 1 dependent variable or outcome variable. Quick recap. IVs or PVs are variables that you want to manipulate and test to see if it will give you the outcome that you want, aka DV or OV. PVs can range from personality types to objective descriptions like gender, age, level of education, etc., while the outcome variable can be whether or not participants like chocolate. For the survey method, you need to ask yourself a research question rather than make a hypothesis. While you can still hypothesize, most tutors want a general RQ. For example, is there a relationship between personality traits and fondness for chocolate? If you're wondering how I had decided on my project topic, hold on to your socks because I'm going to get a little bit nerdy. Throughout my QO7 study, I actually wrote down various topics and RQs that I wanted to study in the future. I have a whole Google Doc full of stuff, split into general psychology, developmental psychology, and sports psychology. So when it was time to think about what I wanted to do for my project, I just ran 5 of those topics past my tutor and we narrowed it down from there. However, in chapter 13 of the second textbook you receive as a DE300 student, you can find a few example research questions there. Firstly, if you're planning on running a multiple regression, which involves exploring the relationship between variables and making predictions, the example research question is there a relationship between different types of personality and the use of online learning technologies? The key word here is relationship. Secondly, if you're planning to carry out a factor analysis, which involves examining whether or not the variations in your participants' responses can be explained by a small number of factors, the example research question is personality type associated with attitudes to online learning among teachers? Keyword association. Once you settle on a topic and an RQ, what you need to do is find relevant questionnaires to test what you're looking for. Unless you're running a factor analysis, which then means that you'll be creating your own scales. You find a whole bunch of links in the resources tab right here and in the file called quantitative resources bank. That will give you a bunch of links for a whole bunch of databases full of different questionnaires and experimental resources. That's how I got the Big 5 questionnaire for my project. If you can't find what you need there, then you can run a search in the OU library for studies that have created a validated measure. Be on the lookout for titles like Development and Validation of a Scale or Developing a Scale to Test. You'll know you found what you need. In case you do have to look for a scale through the studies of others, you need to be aware of a couple of things. Firstly, does it contain a complete scale? This is important. If the study doesn't attach the full scale within the appendix section, then the scale that you're looking for will probably be in either the measurement subsection of the method section or within the results section. But if you're unsure, share the paper with your tutor and ask them, or you can even email the paper authors themselves. And at the same time, ask for permission to use their scale for your bachelor's thesis. That's another important thing that you need to do. Number 2, does the paper mention scoring values? This is important because scoring values will be the data that you collect in order to determine your DV or OV. This would normally be in a scale from 1 to 5 or 7. Some scales will provide neutral options like 3 or 5, while some will not. Those scales will be even numbered. The scales tend to be worded from don't agree to agree completely. You need to pay attention because some scales will include items with reverse coding. Basically, a regular item on a 1 to 5 scale will positively score according to the answer given by the participant. Don't agree with a score of 1, for example. On the other hand, reverse items will place a value of 5 on the same statement because it would be negatively determining a variable. For example, on the 44 item Big 5 inventory by the Berkeley Personality Lab, item 1 is positively scored while item 6 is reverse scored. Both are used to determine the trait extraversion. Once you've gotten your topic and thus your analytical method, your RQ, your scales, you then can move on to the next step. Qualtrics. If you're planning on only distributing your survey online, Qualtrics is where you'll be hosting your questionnaires as an OU student. But outside the realms of the OU, you could also use services like SurveyMonkey and Google Forms to host your questionnaires. It's relatively straightforward to use. I barely had any problems when I was setting up my survey. I'd love to show you step by step on how you can create your Qualtrics survey, but since I've already graduated, I've lost access to my Qualtrics account. But from what I remember, all you need to do is click on Create Survey and you're good to go. Piloting. Piloting can be seen as a test run. You need to do this to ensure that there are no errors in your survey, whether it's grammatical, structural, or otherwise, and that your actual participants will have a smooth sailing experience when taking your survey. Firstly, you need to confirm with your tutor whether or not your survey is ready for the piloting stage. Once you've been given the green light, share your survey with other students in the tutor group forum or even just other members of your household. Just remember to ask for feedback. You will only need about 2 to 3 participants to help with this, and once you've completed this stage, you'll be ready to share your survey with the world. Analysis. Compared to experiments, surveys only have to worry about a couple of analytical methods, factor analysis and multiple regression. You only need to carry out a factor analysis if the purpose of your study is to create your own scale, especially if you can't find the scales that you need to test the thing that you want to test. Otherwise, you should use scales that are already available, and thus you'll be using multiple regression. If I'm honest, it's definitely better for you to use scales that are readily available for you, just in terms of streamlining and making your life a lot easier. Readily available scales have everything that you need. Scale items that have been thoroughly validated and, more importantly, coding instructions. Since you would have all of this on hand, you can just jump right into your multiple regression. But if you're creating your own scale, you will need to find all of this on your own, which is why you need to run a factor analysis. Again, because I've graduated, I've lost access to the SPSS. So in terms of how to carry out the analysis, you should definitely check out the SPSS tutorials provided by the OU, link in the description. But if you do find that the OU tutorials are a bit too simplistic, I definitely did. There are plenty of YouTube tutorials available that you can watch. I've linked some of the ones that I watched in the description as well. Now on to the good stuff. report writing. Although you will get a 5,000 word limit for your report, you don't really have to worry about meeting that limit. This massive limit is actually more for text-based students. For survey and experimental students, I would recommend that you aim to hit between 3,500 to 4,000 words and not any less. I personally leaned more towards the 4,000 mark with a total of 3,910 words. All reports, regardless of methodology, will have the same structure: title, abstract, introduction, method, results, discussion, conclusion, references, and appendices. Now, let's get into each of the sections in a bit more detail. Your title should make clear what it is you're researching. Since you're doing a survey, your project title should make clear that you're investigating a relationship and not analyzing a phenomena or finding a correlation between variables. Here are 3 different examples of 3 different research projects from 3 different methods: survey, text-based, experiment. Aim to keep your title short and to the point, around 20 to 25 words. Let readers know what it is you're researching and give a hint about the analysis that you've undertaken. By the way, your title, references, and appendices sections are not included in the total word count. Abstract. Here you discuss your project in a nutshell. Although this is the first section of your research paper, you should be doing this after you've completed the rest of your project report. In your abstract, you need to condense your introduction, methods, results, and conclusion sections into about 200 words. Your abstract section should provide just enough information to make your readers aware of what your project had entailed, but not too much that it's wordy. Here are a couple of examples from published journals. Now, don't feel too intimidated by the language that they use here. Just try and write as academically as you can, similar to how you've been writing all your TMAs up to this point. Introduction. In this section, you should discuss the rationale behind why you think that your project topic should be researched. This is not, I repeat, not the same as a literature review. It does have aspects of a literature review, but in essence, the introduction brings in aspects of previous studies to justify your project. If you're studying a topic that's under-researched, discuss the research that has been done thus far. If you're investigating a hole in the literature, talk about that. The bulk of your word count will be within your introduction and discussion sections, so aim to fill this with about 35% of your total word count. Methods. The methods section is the section that is recommended for you to write first, since it is the first part of the research that you actually undergo, and really it's the easiest to complete. For survey students, it's split into 3 subsections: participants, measure, and procedure. The participant subsection discusses the demographics of your participant pool. Did you limit the pool in any way? Mention that and explain why here. Even if you didn't place any restrictions, you need to mention that as well. Always ensure that you're following the ethical guidelines of the British Psychological Society. I've put a link to that in the description below. Measure is where you describe the scales you're using for your project. How are you going to collect your data? Online or physically? Do you have any demographic questions? What are the alpha values of the validated scales that you're using? Provide some examples of scale items here. Finally, in the procedure subsection, you need to describe the exact steps that you've taken for your research project in as much detail as possible. How did you create your survey? How did you share it? Via email or text message? Did you post it in the EPW? How long was the survey live for? Describe the experience of taking the survey from the perspective of a participant. Talk about data exportation. Was the data aggregated and anonymous? Are you going to comply with data protection regulations like GDPR? What program did you use to carry out your data analysis? What did your analysis entail? Remember to get in as much detail as possible. Your study needs to be easily replicable. Overall, the methods section should take about 20% of your total word count. Results. This is where you repeat all the funky numbers that you've acquired while running your SPSS analysis. You should always start off by describing your demographics. How many males and or females responded to your survey? What was the mean age of the participant pool? Or if you provided age brackets instead, which age bracket returned the most surveys? Share a table of your demographics like this. You can obtain this from your SPSS dataset if you've collected the relevant data. Do this by clicking on analyze, and then descriptive statistics, and then frequencies. Depending on the kind of data that you've collected, you'll get different kind of frequencies. In general, it would be age and gender, but you could also obtain frequencies for any other demographics that you've collected from your participants. If you've asked participants to pick between age groups, then you should get SPSS to show you the frequencies and percentage. Same with if you've collected participants' sex or gender. If you've asked participants to fill in their exact ages, then you need to obtain the standard deviation, mean, minimum, and maximum values. In terms of discussing the actual results of your project, you need to be aware that the OU wants you to follow the write-up that they've provided in their multiple regression video almost to the T. A multiple regression was carried out to investigate whether predictor variable could significantly predict participants' output variable. The results of the regression indicated that the model explained X% of the variance and that the model was or was not a significant predictor of output variable. F in parentheses xy equals n, p equals v. Report the coefficients and b values of your PVs. The final predictive model was y equals b0 plus b1x1 plus b2x2, etc., etc. Follow this formula exactly. I didn't because my results didn't match up at all to the example, and I was told by a tutor that wasn't my own that I didn't need to. But I got into lots of trouble anyway because I didn't follow it, and I lost a lot of marks. So please, please, please don't make the same mistakes that I did and just follow the dang thing. Discussion. Again, along with your introduction section, it takes up a majority of your word count, around 30% as well. Here, you need to discuss the results of your survey without bringing back the numbers that you talked about in the results section. Bring back all the studies that you've mentioned in the introduction, and do not, I repeat, do not randomly bring in new studies that you have not already spoken of in the introduction section. You can't expect to add new building blocks when your house is nearing completion. Go through all the studies that you've talked about in your introduction section again and relate them to your own findings. Did the model work as expected? Why? Why not? What difficulties did you face during data collection or during your analyses? Use this section to discuss the limitations that you may have faced as well. Your conclusion basically rounds up your discussion into 1 to 2 paragraphs. Since this is technically the end of your report, discuss what future research can do to further refine or complement the results of your study. Make it short and sweet. Aim for it to only eat up like 3% of your word count. The references list of your report is exactly like how you've been doing it throughout your OU study. Use the Harvard referencing system and always arrange the list in alphabetical order. Appendices is where you add every aspect of your research project. Get a notebook. Here's a little checklist for you. Participant brief, participant debrief, the scales that you've used in your project, the scoring of those scales, and your SPSS output tables. Important reminder, both the references and the appendices are not included in the total word count. And that's about it, really. The most frustrating thing is that you can't get your drafts checked by your tutor or any other tutor for that matter, although you will have your title and your abstracts checked within your TMA 04. You can, however, ask as many questions as you like about how to write this thing or that thing, but ultimately you will be on your own throughout the writing process. Tips. Since I personally did go through DE300 with the survey method, all these tips are from my personal experience. Tip number 1. Bounce ideas off your tutor as soon as you have them. The earlier you can do this, the better. Have this set in stone before December comes around. Even if you only have a seed of an idea, talk to your tutor about it. I say this because you need to have a working title ready and run a literature review by the time TMA 2 comes around. Tip number 2. Ask lots of questions. Do not go at this alone. It doesn't matter if you think you're annoying your tutor, just ask them questions. Even if you think it's the stupidest question in the world, just ask it. Your tutor is meant to be your project supervisor, and that means that they should be working hard to ensure that you understand what it is that you need to do during your project. Tip number 3, double check with your tutor the number of participants that they expect you to collect data from. Annoyingly, I had 2 tutors from the same cluster telling me 2 different pieces of information. My tutor only wanted 100 responses, though in the end I got double that amount. So please double check with your own tutor and see what they're expecting of you. Doing this early on will really take the load off when you start distributing your survey. Tip number 4, worry about reverse scoring your scale items on SPSS later on. Seriously, this is just to keep things straightforward during the Qualtrics section of your project. Plus, it's a lot easier to reverse score items on SPSS compared to Qualtrics anyway. Tip number 5, no matter what, just follow the dang instructions. Even if it doesn't make any sense to you, you should just follow whatever the OU has given you to the T. If something doesn't make sense, ask your tutor. If it still doesn't make sense, ask your tutor again. And if it still doesn't make sense after that, just do whatever it says in the things that the OU has given you. Even if another tutor tells you to do something different, do what the OU tells you to do. Trust me, it will save you a lot of grief and emotional energy. Tip number 6, save everything you do twice over. This is so important. I know you'll only be spending a few months on this, but trust me, you should be backing everything up nonetheless. Save 2 versions of your scale on Qualtrics, save your original dataset twice over, save every step that you've taken on SPSS, cleaning up, coding, etc., and save your report file on your laptop and on the cloud. Tip number 7, proofread your work before you even think of sending it off. With any assignment that you write, you should always proofread your work before you send it off. This is to make sure that you're actually writing in the academic style and to avoid sending off a report riddled with grammatical errors. I ran each and every section of my report separately through Grammarly before combining them into one Word file. If you're interested, I've added a link to Grammarly in the description box below. Alright, that's it for this video. I hope it helped you, and if it did, please do let me know by giving that like button a big clickety click. Subscribe if you like to. I won't be making any more OU related videos, but I will be making some hopefully interesting stuff soon, so I hope you stay tuned. If you've already decided on a topic for your DE300 project, let me know in the comments below. I'll be interested to hear all the different topics that you guys come up with, and maybe your ideas could even help others with their projects in the future. Also, if you have any tips of your own, please do leave them in the comments below. Anyway, that's it for my OU series. Good luck with your projects, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!